Imagine being mocked, belittled, and embarrassed every single day just because of where you come from. Until one unforgettable moment changes everything. What would you do if the person everyone underestimated had the ultimate trump card? Today we're diving into a story of unexpected twists, jaw-dropping revelations, and the sweet taste of justice served cold. Stay tuned because this one will leave you speechless. Welcome. Don't forget to subscribe for more captivating tales that keep you on the edge of your seat. Let's begin. The sun rose over Maplewood Academy like it did every other day, bright, proud, and oblivious to the quiet storms brewing in the hearts of its students. In the neatly arranged rows of polished shoes and pressed uniforms stood Mia Thompson, simply a girl who seemed to belong to a different world. Her uniform, though clean, whispered tales of one or two patches and late-night sewing by a tired but loving hand. Her shoes, polished to a shine, tried but failed to hide the cracks of time etched on their surface. Lily Smith, the queen bee of Maplewood Academy, walked in her steps echoing through the hall with a rhythm that demanded attention. Her glossy braids swung with the kind of arrogance money buys, and her pristine uniforms seemed tailored to perfection, as if to mock the existence of the ordinary. Behind her trailed her entourage, a symphony of giggles and whispers that fed her ego like fuel to a roaring fire. She spotted Mia, as she always did. After all, what was a queen without someone to crush beneath her heel? Elle, who decided to grace them with her presence. Today, Lily announced, her voice dripping with honey-laced poison. "Tell me, Mia, did your mother finally save enough to buy you a new uniform? Or is that patchwork from her cleaning rags?" Laughter erupted, bouncing off the walls like a cruel echo. Mia kept her head down, her fingers gripping her notebook as though it were the only thing tethering her to the ground. The words stung sharp as needles, but her silence was her shield. Lily turned to her clique, throwing in one more jab for good measure. "Honestly, if I were her, I'd ask the principal for a scholarship in fashion emergencies." The giggles rose again, a chorus of privilege, ignorance, and thoughtless cruelty. But not everyone was laughing. From a few seats away, a soft voice cut through the noise, gentle but firm. "Don't mind them either. They're not worth it." It was Kai, one of the few who hadn't bought into the hierarchy Lily had built. Mia managed a small, grateful smile, but the weight in her chest didn't lift. Not today. Her thoughts drifted to her mother, Mia, who was probably bent over a mop at Thompson's mansion at that very moment, the same mansion Lily lived in. Mia opened her notebook and wrote a single sentence, the letters pressing deep into the page as if she were engraving them into stone. "One day, they'll all see me for who I am." The school's main hall buzzed with subdued chatter as the principal, Mr. Thompson, walked up to the podium. He was a tall man with a commanding presence, the kind who could silence an entire room with just a glance. The microphone let out a brief, sharp screech, causing the students to wince and fall into an uneasy quiet. Clearing his throat, Mr. Thompson began in his deep, deliberate voice. "Good morning, students. As you all know, our annual Parents' Day is fast approaching." A ripple of excitement caused a buzz through the hall. Parents' Day wasn't just a school tradition, it was a spectacle. A chance for wealthy families to flaunt their influence, arriving in flashy cars and tailored suits, and making charitable donations that doubled as public displays of status. For students like Lily, it was the highlight of the year. For students like Mia, it was a day to endure. Lily leaned toward one of her friends, a sly smile playing on her lips. "Oh, I can't wait to see what ragged excuse Mia brings as her parent. Maybe her mom can clean up after the event for extra tips." The clique burst into quiet laughter, and Lily's polished nails tapped rhythmically against her desk in mock anticipation. Mia sat motionless, her face blank but her hands trembling slightly beneath her desk. Mr. Thompson continued, oblivious to the undercurrent of cruelty rippling through the room. "This year, we'll be hosting several activities, including our traditional parent-student relay and the special award ceremony. We encourage all of you to invite your parents or guardians to celebrate your achievements." Mia's mind drifted. Achievements? What achievements would her mother, Mia, celebrate? That she managed to stitch her uniform back together after yet another tear? That she survived another year of humiliation? She stared at her notebook, its blank pages now a reflection of her own emptiness. Lily whispered loudly enough for the surrounding rows to hear. I hope Mia doesn't embarrass us by bringing her cleaning supplies as her family contribution. The words felt like a slap, but Mia refused to flinch. She knew better than to give Lily the satisfaction of a reaction. As the assembly ended and the students filed out, Kai caught up with Mia. Are you okay? She asked softly. Mia forced a smile, though her lips barely curved. I'm used to it. Her voice was steady, but the ache in her chest was growing. That evening, back at home, Mia sat at the rickety table in their tiny kitchen. Her mother was humming a tune as she folded laundry, her movements slow from exhaustion but her expression calm, almost content. Mia, her mother began hesitantly, Parents' Day is next week. Mia paused, her hands resting on a shirt she had just folded. Oh, I see, she smiled gently. Don't worry, my dear, I'll be there. I wouldn't miss it for the world. Mia looked down at her hands, guilt mingling with her dread. But Lily will laugh, she'll say. She trailed off, unable to voice the cruel predictions she knew would come true. Her mother walked over and placed a hand on Mia's shoulder. Let them laugh, she said softly but firmly. What matters is that I'll be there for you always. The Smith mansion stood like a monument to worth, its towering gates and marble halls a silent proclamation of superior priority over the modest homes in the surrounding neighborhoods. Inside Mia's home, Mia moved quietly, her every step deliberate, her every action precise. To many she was invisible, a shadow blending seamlessly into the grandeur of the estate. But in her mind she was far from invisible. Mia's hands were raw, scrubbed clean of softness by years of hard work, yet they moved tirelessly, scrubbing floors and polishing surfaces until they gleamed with a reflection that seemed to mock her own. As Mia entered the room with the casual arrogance of someone born to luxury, her gaze sweeping the space like an empress surveying her kingdom, there at the center of her gaze was Mia. Oh, Auntie Claire. Lily began, her voice sugary sweet with a bitter aftertaste. Don't forget to polish the staircase. My friends are visiting tomorrow, and we wouldn't want them thinking we live like peasants. Mia didn't respond. She didn't flinch. She didn't even look up. Years of practice had taught her that silence was her greatest armor. But Lily wasn't the type to be satisfied with silence. By the way, Lily continued, her voice now dripping with more contempt, Parents' Day is coming up. Are you going, or does Mia prefer to keep your profession a secret? The words hung in the air, heavy with cruelty. But Mia simply shrugged out her rag and stood her back straight, her eyes steady. I may not have much, she said, her voice quiet but firm, but I'll be there. Mia deserves to have someone in her corner. Lily's laugh was sharp, like the crack of a whip. Well, Lily said, turning toward the staircase, make sure you bring your mop and bucket. You might as well get some work done while you're there. As Lily disappeared up the stairs, Mia allowed herself a single deep breath. Her hands trembled, but not from fear or shame, from exhaustion, from the weight of 1,000 quiet battles fought every day in silence. She looked around the gleaming mansion, at the floor that sparkled under her hands, and she whispered to herself, one day Mia will stand where the strong stand, and when that day comes, they will see. At Mia's home, the night was heavy with its usual silence. The kind that had grown familiar over the years, wrapping itself around the small house like an old warm blanket. The soft light of the lantern flickered across Mia's face as she sat at the rickety wooden table, staring down at the photograph in her hand. It was an old wedding picture, one she had found tucked away in a small box under the bed while searching for her school file earlier that day. Her mother, young and radiant in her wedding dress, stood beside a tall man with a strikingly confident gaze. Mia didn't need to guess who he was. This was her father, the man her mother never spoke about. Mia turned the photograph over for the 100th time, her eyes scanning the faintly written address on the back. The ink was faded, the handwriting slightly smudged, but still legible. A foreign address her mind raised as she pieced together what little she knew about her father. In the first week after he had left the country, her father had called her mother. Mia had scribbled down the address on the back of the photo in case they ever needed to write to him. But that was years ago, and the anger of his leaving had buried the memory as surely as it had buried any mention of him in their home. Mia stared at the address, her heart pounding with a mix of hope and desperation. What if he's still there? What if this address is her chance? The announcement from school echoed in her mind, and Lily's mocking laughter seemed to ring in her ears. Her mother had promised to attend, but Mia couldn't bear the thought of her standing alone, facing the stares and whispers of the wealthy parents. The idea nagged at her until it became unbearable. She had to try. She had to write to him. In their neighborhood, a modest but lively part of the city, there was a new post office built by a charitable organization. Its sleek, modern design stood out amidst the simpler buildings around it. For the first time, the locals had access to services that connected them to places they'd only dreamed of. The organization had made sending letters affordable, even to faraway countries, giving people like Mia the hope of reaching beyond their circumstances. Mia sat down at the table, the photograph propped up against her notebook. The pen in her hand felt heavy, trembling slightly as she began to write. Dear Papa, it's been so many years since I last saw you. I don't even know if this letter will reach you, but I have to try. The words came slowly at first, her mind struggling to give shape to the emotions she had buried for so long. But as the ink flowed across the page, her feelings poured out with it, her longing, her questions, her hopes. When she finished, she carefully folded the letter, her hands lingering on the edges as if to give it strength. She copied the address from the back of the photo with painstaking precision, her writing neat and deliberate. The next morning, she slipped the envelope into her school bag. After class, while other students rushed home, Mia made her way to the post office. The building seemed almost out of place in their local neighborhood, its shiny glass windows reflecting the setting sun. Inside, a kind attendant greeted her, explaining the various delivery options. Fastest service available, he said. Mia's voice trembled slightly, but was filled with determination. The price the attendant quoted made her stomach sink. She reached into her bag and put out a small pouch filled with coins and crumpled notes, her savings from months of skipping snacks and running errands. The attendant smiled kindly. This service will ensure it reaches the address in just a few days. Mia nodded, clutching the receipt tightly as she stepped out of the post office. The world seemed brighter, lighter. Her savings were gone, but in their place, she carried hope. The question still lingered. What if he's not there? But another thought pushed it aside. What if he is? With Parents' Day fast approaching, Mia walked home that evening with a renewed sense of purpose. The school grounds buzzed with anticipation that morning, a symphony of polished shoes clicking on concrete, chatter, and the faint hum of car engines. Parents' Day at Maplewood Academy was not just an event, it was a spectacle. The perfect opportunity for the rich and powerful to parade their success under the guise of celebrating their children. The main parking lot transformed into a display of wealth. Parents stepped out dressed like they were attending a gala rather than a school event, their outfits tailored, their shoes shining as brightly as their ambitions. Lily and her family arrived in a sleek black SUV, the type that seemed to glide rather than drive. As the chauffeur opened the door, Lily stepped out with the air of royalty, her outfit glittering just enough to remind everyone who she was. Her father, Mr. Smith, followed close behind, already on his phone, barking orders to someone unfortunate enough to work for him. Lily scanned the crowd, her lips curving into a satisfied smirk. Her clique rushed to her side, showering her with compliments. "Lily, your dress is gorgeous," one of them squealed. "It must have cost a fortune." Lily's eyes gleamed. This was her moment, her stage. But then she saw Mia standing alone at the far end of the courtyard. Her smile widened, cruelty gleaming like a blade. Mia's uniform, though clean, was no match for the sea of designer outfits around her. Lily whispered to her friends, her voice loud enough to carry, "Where's her mom? Still scrubbing floors somewhere, or did she finally buy herself a mop fancy enough to bring to school?" The laughter was immediate, sharp and piercing. But then from across the courtyard, Mia saw her mother. Mia, walking toward her, holding a simple tote bag filled with Mia's favorite snacks. She wore her best dress, neatly ironed but faded from years of wear, her shoes old but polished to a mirror shine, clicking softly on the pavement. Lily's laugh rang out again, louder this time, slicing through the air like a blade. "Oh look, she's snared. Maybe Auntie Claire decided to show up. I wonder if she brought her broom." She might want to sweep the courtyard while she's here. Mia didn't react. Her eyes stayed on Mia, her smile unwavering. Mia swallowed hard. Shame burned in her chest, but so did something else. Anger. Not at her mother, never at her mother, but at the world that allowed people like Lily to stand on a pedestal built from other people's struggles. The principal's voice crackled over the loudspeaker, calling for everyone to gather for the opening ceremony. The ceremony was in full swing, the principal's voice booming over the microphone as he welcomed the parents and praised the school's exceptional standards of excellence. Applause punctuated his every statement, but no one in the audience was fully listening. Conversations buzzed, laughter erupted, and the subtle competition to outshine others continued in the background. But then it happened. A sleek black helicopter sliced through the sky with the confidence of something that belonged. Its blades churned the air with authority before descending slowly onto the school sports field, thrusting smoke into the air as the crowd shielded their faces, turning into an audible wave of confusion and excitement. The principal mid-sentence, his words trailing off into silence, as the entire gathering turned their attention to the unexpected arrival. Parents whispered among themselves, their earlier boasts forgotten in the face of this grand display. The helicopter landed with a final thunderous roar, and for a moment, everything was still. Then the door opened, and a man stepped out. He was tall, commanding, and impeccably dressed in a tailored suit that seemed to shimmer in the sunlight. His presence exuded authority, every step purposeful as he descended from the helicopter. Sunglasses shielded his eyes, but his expression was unreadable, calm, composed, and utterly unbothered by the hundreds of eyes glued to him. The crowd parted instinctively as he walked toward them, whispers swelling like leaves in his wake. Who is he? Is he a government official? Maybe a foreign investor? But Mia wasn't wondering. She wasn't whispering. She wasn't even breathing. Her heart pounded in her chest, her mind racing to catch up with what her eyes were seeing. The man was walking straight toward her, his long strides carrying him closer. Mia placed a hand on her mother's shoulder, her grip tightening as the man stopped just a few feet away. Then he smiled. Not at the crowd, not at the parents, not at the principal who stood frozen on the stage. He smiled at her. His voice deep and steady, "My daughter." The silence that followed was deafening. You could almost hear the collective gasp as reality crashed into the stunned crowd. The whispers began anew, louder this time. "That's her father. Wait, she's the cleaner's daughter, isn't she? No way, look at him." But Mia couldn't hear them. She couldn't feel the stares or the shock or the weight of every mocking word she'd ever endured. In that moment, there was only him. The father she had dreamed of, written to and prayed for. And he was here. The crowd, still frozen in stunned silence, seemed to hold its collective breath as Kai took another step toward Mia. Every movement he made felt deliberate, every gesture a statement. His tailored suit caught the sunlight, shimmering like a declaration of his authority. The whispers behind him grew louder, curiosity turning into disbelief. And then there was Mr. Smith. He had been standing with his chest puffed out just moments earlier, reveling in the admiration of his peers, but now his shoulders sunk as his eyes locked between Kai and Mia. The realization dawned slowly but unmistakably. He took a step forward, clearing his throat as if to summon some semblance of control over the situation. "Sir," Mr. Smith began, his voice faltering, the confidence stripped from it. I didn't expect." Kai turned toward him, his gaze sharp, cold, and utterly unforgiving. "You didn't expect me," he said, his voice calm but with a quiet power. "But you should have." The crowd shifted uneasily. The parents who had moments ago been vying for attention now faced a mix of confusion and curiosity. The students, usually lost in their own world, stood still, their eyes wide with fascination. And then there was Lily, her usual smirk replaced by a look of pure disbelief. She took a step back, her confidence crumbling as quickly as her father's had. Her perfectly curated words, the ones in which she was the queen and Mia was the perpetual target of her cruelty, were crumbling before her eyes. Kai wasn't finished. He turned back to Mia, his expression softening as he reached for her hand. She hesitated, her mind struggling to process the reality of the moment, but then she let him take it. His grip was warm, steady, so unlike the cold hold she had endured for years. Mia, he said, his voice low enough that only she and her mother could hear. I'm sorry it took me so long. I couldn't find you, but I'm glad you found me. The address you wrote to? I recently bought back the house with the hope that your mother can forgive me and write to me. That's why I never came back to this country. Mia's throat tightened. The words she wanted to say trapped somewhere between her heart and her lips. She nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Mia stood beside them, silent but watchful, her hand resting over her heart. For years, she had carried the burden of Kai's absence, shouldering the weight of both parenthood and poverty for Mia's sake. Kai turned back to Mr. Smith, his expression hardening once more. We'll speak business later, he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. This is family time. Mr. Smith nodded stiffly, the usual bluster gone from his demeanor. Meanwhile, Lily remained rooted in place, her face pale as the pieces of the puzzle began to fit together. Mia wasn't just the cleaner's daughter, she was the daughter of a man her father worshipped, probably his boss. The reality hit her like a tidal wave, washing away every ounce of arrogance she had worn like armor. The principal, sensing the shift in the atmosphere, stepped forward hesitantly. Well, he said, his voice wavering, it seems we've had a most unexpected guest. Let us, continue with the program. But no one moved, no one clapped. All eyes remained on Kai, on Mia, on the unfolding drama that no one could look away from. Parents' Day, which had begun as a stage for the wealthy to flaunt their status, had turned into something far more interesting. The murmurs hadn't died down when Kai walked toward the podium. His stride was calm but deliberate, cutting through the sea of stunned faces like a blade. He climbed the short steps to the microphone, with the same quiet authority that had rendered the crowd speechless moments earlier. He took a breath, leaning into the microphone. Good morning, he began, his voice rich and steady, commanding attention without effort. The crowd fell completely silent. Even the restless students, usually quick to tune out speeches, seemed unable to look away. Many of you may be wondering who I am and why I'm here, he continued. My name is Kai. I left this country many years ago with nothing but a dream and a cloth on my back. I worked hard, endured struggles I wouldn't wish on anyone, and slowly built a life for myself. But in chasing success, I made a mistake, one that I regret every day. I left behind the people who mattered most. He paused, his eyes finding Mia once again. She stood motionless, her notebook clutched tightly to her chest, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. She is my greatest pride. She is strong, intelligent, and kind, qualities that far outweigh anything money can buy. And her mother, Mia, is the most resilient woman I have ever known. Everything I have achieved, every bit of success, pales in comparison to what they have endured. The crowd shifted uneasily, guilt flickering across some of the parents' faces. They had laughed at this family and dismissed them as insignificant. Now standing before them was the man they had envied, admired, and whispered about, claiming the very people they had mocked as his pride. Kai's tone shifted, his voice now firmer and more deliberate. We live in a world that too often measures worth by the clothes we wear, the cars we drive, or the wealth we display. But true worth lies in character, in kindness, in resilience. And that is why I am here today, not just to celebrate my daughter, but to ensure that no other child in this school feels the weight of judgment based on circumstances beyond their control. He turned to the principal, nodding briefly. I will be establishing a scholarship fund for students who come from humble beginnings. It is my hope that this will remind everyone here that potential is not limited by privilege, and that greatness often comes from the most unexpected places. A ripple of applause began, hesitant at first, then growing louder. The students clapped eagerly, while the parents followed suit, some more reluctantly than others. As Kai walked back to where Mia stood, the crowd began to shift again. The ceremony resumed in its uneasy wake. Lily's friends, sensing the shift in power, began to step back, their loyalty to her fading as quickly as the morning breeze. One by one, they drifted away, their attention now drawn to the unfolding drama of admiration surrounding Mia and her family. Unable to take the weight of the silence pressing down on her, Lily finally moved her steps hesitantly, her confidence shattered. She approached Mia, her usual smirk replaced by a tight, unattractive smile. Oh, Mia, she began, her voice quiet, almost shaky. "I didn't mean." She stopped, the words tangling in her throat. She had always been quick with insults, but apologies were foreign territory. Mia turned to her, her expression calm and unreadable. The hatra Mia had caused over the years was still there, buried deep, but it no longer defined her. She looked at Lily, not with anger, but with a quiet strength that was far more disarming. "It's okay," Mia said, her voice steady but soft. "You don't have to explain." Lily blinked, her mouth opening and closing like she wanted to say more, but nothing came out. She looked down at her perfectly manicured nails, suddenly finding them far less impressive than before. Without another word, she turned and walked away. Her shoulders hunched in a way that made her seem much smaller than the girl who had strutted onto the school grounds that morning. The next morning, as the school bell rang and students filed into their classes, a new kind of whisper filled the hallways. It wasn't mockery or pity. This time it was something else entirely. Admiration, curiosity, even envy. Mia arrived late to school, but this time it was different. The sound of the helicopter echoed through the school field, calling the attention of all students. Kai walked Mia out and waved at her as she entered. Mia walked in wearing the same uniform she had always worn, but this time it felt different. It wasn't about the fabric or the patches. It was about the girl wearing it. She carried herself with a quiet confidence, her notebook in hand, her gait steady. Lily sat silently at her usual spot in the courtyard, her clique conspicuously absent. She watched as Mia passed by, their eyes meeting briefly. There was no smirk this time, no sneer, just a faint nod, a silent acknowledgement of a truth they both now understood. Mia smiled softly and kept walking. She didn't need validation from anyone anymore. She had found something far more powerful, her self-worth, untethered from the opinions of others. And somewhere above, the sun shone just a little brighter, as if the world itself was watching and cheering her on. And so Mia's story reminds us all of one simple truth. Life has a way of flipping the script when we least expect it. From the girl who was laughed at for her rags, to the one who taught everyone the true meaning of what a journey proves, that resilience, love, and character will always outshine wealth and arrogance. But what about Lily? Will she learn from her humiliation? And what will the future hold for Mia and her family as they navigate this new chapter? Only time will tell. Thank you for watching this heartfelt story of triumph, humility, and redemption. If you enjoyed this tale, don't forget to like, share, and hit that subscribe button so you never miss another captivating story from Maplewood Storytime. Here, we don't just tell stories, we bring them to life. See you in the next one.